Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we're going to head back up towards Aberdeen where I used to study. We're going to visit a little village about 15 miles south of there called Stonehaven, and their local brewery of course is called 6 Degrees North, and this beer is called the Jiang Shi, which is a Belgian double IPA, and I've had this on tap at their brew pub in Aberdeen and it's a very nice beer, so I'm quite interested to see how the bottled version of it has turned out. But anyway, as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll take you through a very brief history of the company. It is only a minute or two, but if you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. The brewery website's in the description for you below, along with a link to my other reviews that I've done from these guys before, and no doubt I will add to those in the fairly near future. So as I said to you, 6 Degrees North are a fairly new Scottish craft brewery, and they're based in Stonehaven, a little fishing town about 15 miles to the south of the northeastern city of Aberdeen. And these guys pride themselves on their sort of Belgian brewing style, and they're very interesting in that way because all their beers that they brew themselves are Belgian styled, but you get a really interesting kind of take with this because all their beers have a very kind of minerally taste, which is typical of Scottish water. Just because of the water essentially that they use in these beers, you get a nice Belgian flavoured beer, but it has this really cool sort of Scottish minerally taste in the water. So very interesting and a very good place to start if you want to get into Scottish craft beer. But the brewery itself is owned by Robert, who's known colloquially within the company as Brew Bob, and he lived and worked for a period of time in Belgium, and this is where his love of Belgian beer really began. But you can see him regularly in the brew pub in Aberdeen, and he's actually a very nice guy to talk to, so do go and check out 6 Degrees North Brew Pub in Aberdeen next to Marshall College if you get the chance, and Bob's a very nice guy, so have a chat to him. But they have their brew pub, as I said to you, next to Marshall College in Aberdeen. This brew pub has about 30 different taps and 300 different Belgian bottled beers, so it really is worth going to if you're a bit of a beer geek. But the origins of the brewery go back to a hotel in the marina in Stonehaven called the Marine Hotel, and according to the Marine Hotel website, the main construction of the brewery building went on in August of 2012, and they received and installed their new equipment over the next few months. And their first trial brews actually started in January of 2013, and in May they secured the site for their brew pub in Aberdeen, and they actually did their first commercial brews in March of 2013 in time for the brew pub opening, which I believe was in May, because I was in there on the second day like the Scottish alcoholic that I am. But a very nice brew pub, and also the Marine Hotel bar is very nice. I've been in there before, so go and check out these places if you do want to visit Scotland, and indeed if you are from here, really nice places to go. But anyway, that's your sort of brief history of 6 Degrees North Brewery, so we'll actually get on to the tasting of this beer. It is an 8% Belgian double IPA. I'll just bring up the camera and let you have a little quick look at the artwork on this bottle. And I actually really like the way they present their beers here because the labels are done quite minimally, and if you do go into the brew pub you will see that it is actually, I would call it a sort of minimalist art style. I'm not sure if they'd agree with that, but it's very simple, and but it looks really good, if that makes sense, and they take the same approach with their labels, and I think they've turned out very well. It's just a plain bottle cap on it, and it does tell you a little bit about the name of the brewery and stuff on the back here. The main point that it makes on the back is it says they're brewing in northeast Scotland, 6 degrees north of Brussels. We are blessed with pure and soft water, as I told to you, and fields abound with high quality barley. We won't tamper with nature's intent. All our brews are unfiltered and carbonated naturally through secondary fermentation, bottle conditioning if you like, and these processes provide the aspirational drinker with a live, full and uncompromising experience that will continually evolve. So yeah, so that's why they're called 6 Degrees North, because Aberdeen, or Stonehaven if you like, is 6 degrees north of Belgium. But without further ado, let's get this guy out and get on to the tasting here. So an 8% double IPA from Stonehaven in Scotland. Belgian style double IPA I should say. But yeah, as you crank it open you can smell a little bit of that yeast coming out. All of the 6 Degrees North beers really have this big kind of yeasty character to them. And as I said, one of the big, the sort of primary components of the taste in these beers really is the kind of minerally water. So you get a nice Belgian style beer, but with this really nice sort of Scottish mineral water taste. So very interesting beers. So as you can see, this guy's come out with a finger of head on it. It's definitely very white head, definitely frothy, no arguing about that, not bumpy in the slightest. If I bring the camera up, you can see not transparent at all. I'd describe this guy, if I bring the light up for you, you can see just how bright it is. It's definitely a nice bright goldeny amber colour there. There's a little teeny bit of sediment just on the bottom of the glass, and that's probably just because the beer's been in the fridge for a day or two, I think it is now, but it looks really nice, not transparent in the slightest. The carbonation isn't really visible actually, but you can see just one or two little bubbles going up towards the bottom of the head. But yeah, it looks a very, very nice beer, bright goldeny orange amber colour. So let's have a wee look at the aroma here. So you can smell there's a lot of grassy hop coming off this one, I think, first of all. If you sugar it up a little bit, you can really pick up the sort of big bready and yeasty character that are quite typical of these beers. There's a little bit of spice in it, but I think the most sharp components of the aroma, if you like, really are the sort of citrusy lemon and the grassy hop, I think. And that's quite unusual for 6 Degrees North. Normally with their beers, you get a big waft of kind of bready and yeasty components coming off of it. It's a little spicy as well, and you can only really pick that up, I think, when you sugar it up a little bit more. But I think the sharper lemon citrus and grassy hops are the main things that are coming out of this guy. So yeah, it smells very nice. It's got the typical elements you would expect of a sort of Belgian ale. It reminds me quite a bit of a blonde ale in terms of the aroma. Just the sort of grassy hops and citrusy element to it. But the big bready yeast, you can smell it just mildly. If you just hold it like this without sugaring it, you can smell it in the background, but if you just hold it still, then that's when you're getting the lemony citrus and the grassy hop character out of it. Mainly, but underneath there is this kind of bready yeasty character. But sugar it up and you will get all those elements out of it. But without further ado, let's give this guy a taste. This is the Jiang Shi Belgian Double IPA from 6 Degrees North in Stonehaven in Scotland. Slàinte. See, it tastes very, very different from what the aroma would have you believe. Within this guy, you've got the first thing that comes off in the taste of this is it's got a big alcohol warmth to it, and with it being 8% and being a Belgian beer, you will know what I'm talking about. You've got this kind of darky, kind of caramel element to it that really sort of is where the alcohol warmth is found. So yeah, initially with this one, I think you're getting a big, sweet, sort of caramel malt that just kind of blankets the tongue, but then that subsides a little bit, and then you start to get the big bready and yeasty flavours coming out, and that just blankets the tongue there once that kind of sharpness from the caramel malts has dissipated a little bit. But yeah, that caramel flavour I'm talking about is really mixing with the sort of grassy and aromatic and sort of citrusy flavour hop. The citrus in this guy is definitely a sort of lemony citrus. It's that typical sort of thing that it almost reminds me a little bit of the kind of sharpness, the aromatic sharpness that you get from a kind of Czech Pils beer, if you like. Around the edges of the tongue, you really are getting that sort of aromatic-y hop and the nice bitter dryness that you expect from, I think it's usually the sort of Sats hop that you get from the Czech Republic. It actually reminds me a little bit of that. You just get this really nice, quite sharp, aromatic, dry, bitter character around the edges of the tongue. There's some lemony citrus and some sort of softer, grassy hop flavours in there. But initially when you take this beer in, it's a kind of big, sweet, boozy caramel flavour you're getting from this guy just before you get right to the edges of the tongue. But yeah, you just feel this little oily bubble move towards the front of the tongue, and that's where the grassy flavours of the hop are. Usually you get the sort of fruity flavours out from that little oily bubble, but I think it's mainly grassy flavours that are coming just with that little bubble that moves towards the front of the tongue. Around the back edges of the palate, that's where I think there's a little bit of grassy and slightly aromatic-y hop coming out at the back of the palate, but around the front edges of the tongue, that's where the lemony citrus is lying, and you have the sort of aromatic-y and grassy flavours sitting there too, but I think it's mainly a sort of aromatic-y sharpness just at the back corners of the palate. There's a little bit of spice actually as you move into the aftertaste of this beer. There's a little bit of spice just kind of sits there on that kind of yeasty and bready blanket on the tongue that you get just that builds in the aftertaste. And there's a kind of, it's almost like a line of sweet caramel just goes down the middle of your tongue, but it is quite boozy. That's the first thing you'll notice about this beer, is that at 8%, this one doesn't hide its alcohol warmth all that well, but that's kind of typical of Belgian beers. It's almost in the same way that some of the 10, this beer, even though it's 8%, to me it tastes a little bit more like it should be about 9 or 10 or maybe even 11%, something like that. And of course there's nothing wrong with not hiding your alcohol warmth, but at the same time it does feel a little bit heavier than it actually is. Yeah, it is. The lemony citrus in this, it does actually build a little bit in sharpness as you take the thing in. Once your mouth actually adjusts a little bit to the flavour, that sort of caramel blast that I was talking about, you can see the sort of citrusy lemon mixing in with the flavours on this guy. So it is actually a very interesting flavour to pick up on, and you can actually taste the sort of minerally water as your palate adjusts to the flavour that you get from this guy. You get that typical sort of Scottish minerally water flavour to it. So it is a very, very nice beer. In terms of the difference between this and the tap version, from what I remember, the tap version just feels slightly wetter, if you like. It's a bit more sort of a creamy mouth feel, and the caramel isn't quite as boozy from what I remember. It's a little bit more of a kind of creamy mouth feel, even if that makes sense a bit. But the mouthfeel of this guy is quite mid-bodied. You've got a kind of very soft and very smooth carbonation in it. It's got a nice smooth mouthfeel, quite rich actually, but it's smooth at the same time as being oily. So I think that's a kind of definite way to describe it. But around the edges of the tongue, it is quite dry, but there's not that much in the way of bitter character about it, I'd say, once the liquid gets off the palate. So the aftertaste is quite dry, but not very bitter. But the lingering aftertaste really is that kind of dry, aromatic-y character about it. So it's quite nice. It's a very interesting Belgian style, and I'd never actually heard of the sort of Belgian double IPA, if that makes sense. I was always used to the Dubbel beer, which was the sort of darker colour, and you had the sort of stone fruits and rich caramel flavours. This guy is definitely a double. It's almost like an American double IPA, but with a Belgian yeast malt base. So I'm not sure if that's the kind of if that is how you would define a Belgian double IPA. But as I've said in my videos previously, you can talk about styles quite a bit, but as long as the beer actually tastes really nice, then that's the main point you want to talk about. And this is a really good beer. It's quite a bit heavier than some of the other ones that you can get from these guys. So what I would say to you is, if you're planning on trying a few of the different 6 Degrees North stuff, I would save this one till last. You know, try the Saison beer, the Wanderlust Wheat, or some of the other ones first, some of the lighter ones, and then save this for your last one of the night, because it is a little bit harder to drink just because of the alcohol warmth you get from it, and it does feel just that little bit heavier. But there's nothing wrong with the taste of this beer. It is very, very nice, and if you are into sort of nice big Belgian beers, then I would recommend it to you. The sort of mineral character in this one, I would say it's a little bit less pronounced, but that's probably just because of the booziness of the beer. In comparison with the other ones you can really taste that kind of mineral character to it, but the alcohol warmth kind of makes that kind of puts that down a little bit with this beer. But it is very, very nice, so definitely worth trying. And any of the beers you get from 6 Degrees North are pretty damn good, and if you like Belgian beer, they really are worth checking out. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this beer review. As I say, go and check out 6 Degrees North from Stonehaven. You can find them in Aberdeen or in Stonehaven, and you can get their beers all throughout Scotland now in the various different bottle shops. Go and check out Rate Beer and find out where you can find a really good bottle shop near you. But I hope you've enjoyed this beer review. It's been cool once again to visit 6 Degrees North. Let me know in the comments section your own thoughts on this beer below, as always. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff, and I will catch you soon with my next beer review. Cheers!